My name is Morgan Thelander, and I'm the COO at Thelander Consulting.
And I am Jody Thelander, the founder and CEO of Thelander Consulting.
We want to welcome you to our first podcast episode of Caplander. Caplander is all things private capital market, where we're going to dive into the dynamic world of private capital markets. Whether you're new to private market investing or a seasoned entrepreneur, this podcast unpacks the latest trends, insights, and opportunities shaping investment firms and private companies. Our inaugural season is going to have about 6 episodes, but Jody and I figured that we would kick the first one off, tell you a little bit of how we got here, how Jody started the company, answer a lot of the frequently asked questions we get behind the scenes. And then, of course, the following episodes will feature expert guests and deep discussions on all aspects of the private capital market.
Very exciting, Morgan.
I know. Here we go.
Started this company almost 30 years ago, and you are going to have your coming and impending birthday, which really marks when I started this company. You and your brother were flicking Cheerios at me in the kitchen in our home in Mill Valley, California. And now I'm here in Miami and you're in St. Louis.
Seriously, we've come a very long way. So I think really a lot of people obviously are curious to know what made you start a compensation data and consulting firm. There are a lot of tech companies who do this, but you're a very pure consulting firm, and everything you do really comes from a data-driven standpoint. So how did you decide to start your own company? What made you want to decide to start your own company? And tell us.
Well, I think that's a really good point because I came from really the service business. I started in the fashion business. I interned at Vogue in London, and I worked for Ralph Lauren women's wear in New York. Well, I guess I really worked for Bonwit Teller, but I was opening up the in-store boutiques for Ralph Lauren inside of a department store. And it taught me a lot about service and about high level of consistency and branding. And then I ended up moving from New York. I guess a little bit fast forward, I ended up in San Francisco, and that time it was sort of the go-go.com days. And I had you and Blake, your brother, and you were little kids. And I really always liked the flexibility. And my father, your grandfather, is an entrepreneur. So I was inspired to have my own company. And then you asked, well, how did you get into thinking about the data business somewhere in between the fallout of the fashion world and wanting to have a career? I ended up working for TRW Space and Defense. And during one of my rotations there, I worked for a guy in compensation, and he had me filling in all these surveys. And I really liked it. I thought that compensation was very tricky, but these surveys really made you think more clearly about compensation. I mean, you know this, right, Morgan?
I mean, yeah, I think it's really unique to run, not necessarily unique is the right word, but it's always interesting because going from fashion, right? I mean, you're such a fashion woman in like such a perfect form, and you're always dressed to the nines, head to toe, whether you're going to a workout class or you're going to the pool to get your swim in, or you're going to speak at a conference. I mean, no matter what it is, I think how you carry yourself and how you represent the firm and the company is very representative of how you got here.
Well, that's also representative of how you got here, because I've always
Right.
had that byline of how you do anything is how you do everything. And I know when you used to try and leave the house, wearing pajamas to school, that was a hard no, because it's really important that you set the tone and your intention for what you do and how you dress and how you think and how you keep your relationships and how you build a business and how you clean data and how you do anything is really important to set a tone. So it's been very important for me over these years. And really, it goes back to those original roots, right? If you pick up a Vogue magazine or go into a Ralph Lauren store, there is a high level of consistency and customer service and quality, and you know it from the start. And that's always what I wanted for the company.
Yeah. I mean, it makes sense. So let's start. So you started your company in 97 in the Bay Area. What made you, so did you run a survey to start with? What was the first survey? How did you get it into the marketplace, and how did you get people to respond?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I started with all the .com stuff in San Francisco, and we really did a little bit everything. The first name of the company was not Thelander, it was hrsizzle.com.
I remember those pads, like the notepads all over.
We still have the same logo, which is sort of rounded, but it was all things for private companies. And really, it looked like all the good stuff was going on in the boardrooms. And of course, the most important thing was the mix between cash and equity. And then when the .com bubble burst, I answered a job ad on monster.com because it was important for me to support my 2 children as a single mom, and I got a job at a company called Fluidigm, which is now public, a biotech company, and in the board meetings, there was a lot of discussion and requests for comp data that was exclusive to biotech companies, and it didn't exist.
So it really came from the investors.
Yeah, they were looking at the time that that company was backed by very formidable investors, Kleiner Perkins, TPG Biotech, Brooke Byers from Kleiner Perkins, Caulfield and Byers, people who, have since retired but had very illustrious, prominent careers. And so I offered to run a survey for biotech companies, and the formula was that they would have to ask their portfolio companies to participate. And it was a true give to get model, and that whatever the companies gave us, we gave it back to them, and it was a printed report. And I used the same
Right.
formula of the kind of surveys that I filled in when I was working for TRW, very traditional compensation. But the biggest difference was it was equity versus public company stock.
Yeah. I think that's one of the things now where, and fill in for me here, is that companies really say, well, why would I participate in a survey? Or why would I take a survey? It takes time. I have to figure out the job matching. I have to make sure I gather all of my information. It would be so much easier if I could just pull this number from online or if I could get it free from somebody else.
Well, let's face it, the first of all, people participated because they always got almost everything back. In the beginning, they got everything back, and little by
Yeah.
little, it had to become some way to survive and make money, and we weren't a charitable contribution, so we started to
Right.
charge for the reports and give less free data, but always something. So that was everybody's incentive. And it's like if you go on a website now and you fill in how many times you've put your name and your email in to get your
God,
15%
I've
discount
I've
code.
reset so many passwords because I can't remember what it is, but I want that coupon.
Right, and you open up new accounts, you come up with
Right.
new emails, you use everybody's email that you know so they can send it to you. So anyhow, we always had the give to get
Right.
model, and now that's why people would do it. And of course, the Thelander name, being a namesake firm, was trustworthy.
Yeah. Well, especially now because data is such a big business and having data in general is so important. I mean, people collect information on their customers and who's visiting their website. And when you collect such sensitive information like compensation data, you need to make sure that it's going to a trusted resource because it's not something that you necessarily want to get out everywhere.
Which really makes me laugh as, back in the day when I was building my career, I always knew that I wanted to come up with something that would be consistently used in the marketplace, right? What like
Right.
having an annuity, and that's where the data was really smart because I was ahead of my time. And I remember once there's a very prominent law firm, and one of the partners said to me, Jody, just follow that data, follow the data. And when smart
Right.
people give you guidance that way, if you are smart, you will listen to it. So,
Yeah. Well, it's true. I mean, the reality is that, and I love how you say this in webinars and obviously now this podcast, but that the data is only as good as you know what to do with it. And it's something where you can really find data and you can find numbers that you're looking for pretty much anywhere now. But the reality is, who is going to help you understand that data and who's going to put it into context for you?
this is goes back to the original tenets of the business, and PS how you were raised, because quality in, quality out, and that's how it has to be. There have to be standards and boundaries, and there has to be a holistic mindset to it, to a methodology. Why are we giving you this data? We're not just giving you raw data points, we're giving you information so that you can make good decisions and that your company will be successful. I mean, it's all
Right.
been predicated on the fact that we've been lucky to participate in this world, but we've also in the private markets, and we wanted companies to be successful.
Yeah. It's a very good point, especially because when you get the compensation right from the beginning, it can take a good or an average company into a great company. And it's really
Yeah.
something that can set the tone when you have a comp philosophy, when you have infrastructure in place and you're not just flying by the seat of your pants. It sets your company up for more success because the people are the company. And it's changes along the line. Sometimes in the beginning, the early employees you have who are going to build the foundation of the company and make you successful is going to be very different than the people you hire on later.
Well, and even in today's world where the market is tricky to be able to raise capital, it's taking longer, but good companies are raising bigger rounds of financing. And once they
Right.
do that, then there's going to be a lot of dilution on that cap table. I don't want to
Yeah.
get too much into the actual compensation because I could
Yes.
go on and on with that. I think it's also important to
Go
understand how
ahead.
you got your Morgan, right? I mean, you were
Oh
raised
my
with the business.
gosh.
And there were a lot of
Seriously,
times where you and your brother were locked in the back seat of the car while I had to stand outside of the car to take a call. And
never,
then
never. That never happened. No, you never see a parent turn around so quickly where they look at you like stern, and you
yeah,
know that is the "I am not messing with you" situation,
you're
and
quiet,
that
right.
right, you're like, "You need to just shut your mouth because"
Yeah, you want to eat dinner tonight? You want to keep a roof over your head? You have to be quiet.
oh my gosh. Well, I think so I have been an official employee for 8 years, and I've obviously grew up with the business, but I think I mean, I'm so proud because I saw the whole, beginning to end from as long as I can remember where used to run a survey schedule. Like private
Yeah.
company went, then you had supplemental surveys, then eventually investment firm came on, and then you had year-end surveys and all of these different reports that were getting published. And you mentioned the PDFs, but it's been so exciting to see, obviously, as technology advances, but how the company has also continued to progress along with those advancements. So now our surveys are open year round, everything's on our own IP, and then also being able to have real time data and then interactive data and being able to customize things more.
Right. Well, you came on in the business, and as a daughter, I trusted you and had confidence in your integrity around what you were looking to do with the business as it was. But you looked at the platform right away, and why did you feel like it needed to be upgraded? Like the data was always good, but
The platform, frankly, was really the part that I was less focused on, but it was the easiest place to start because the bones were there. The biggest project that we undertook on the technology side was moving the survey in-house. And that was a huge investment, but a very important investment. And I'll never forget it was a couple of years ago when I was we used to use a third party provider, and I could see how we were pulling the data out was starting to get more limited. And I remember telling you, this is time because it's
or
the foundation for everything we do.
this goes back to though the original days, right? When I started this business, I had two small children. Your brother was
Right.
6 months old, and you were 2.5 years old.
Why didn't you ever want to raise capital, outside capital to kind of scale quickly?
Yeah, it's a good question. Well, when I started the business, I had Bank of Mom and Dad funding me, which was very helpful. And I felt like I was completely independent, but I had a little bit of a net. And then as things grew from there, I came across a tech team and a tech guy, Brad, who's still with us today. So we're going into almost 25 years
Yeah.
together. And Brad did my first surveys with me, and he was always very respectful of the fact that I had two little kids, and as he was watching you grow up and the business maturing, he was also very protective of me spending additional money. And it never got to the pressure point because this is, like you ever hear that story where the old cow and the new cow are standing up at the top of the hill and they see all the lambs down below or the sheep down below. And the one cow, the young cow's like, I'm going to go get that sheep. And the older cow says, I'm going to go slow and I'm going to get all of them. And so that's
Right.
slow and steady, right? I wasn't just gonna go get one, I was gonna get all of them, and here we are, and going slower
Right.
actually turned out to be a better approach. Because when it comes to data and the quality in, quality out, it takes time. Good things take time, and so
So
the
true.
capital the capital wasn't there was no urgency. You see these, shit companies that come up that are slapping stuff on, and the
Yeah.
reality is all that money is not giving them quality and proven and tried,
Right.
examples and data. So that's
Right.
why.
Makes
Plus,
sense.
I don't know how I would have worked for a board. I'm more disruptive than I am a team player that way. So,
You don't play nicely in the sandbox?
I mean, I do with you because you're my child and we have a team basically of
True.
people that we know everybody's mother and we built it this way. But I think a board might have been at that stage of my life where I was still evolving as a person and trying to grow up myself might have been too much for me to handle.
Yeah. I think sometimes there's a lot of power in being able to know what is the right step for you and where your strengths are versus where your weaknesses are and where it probably is safer to not get into that area.
I mean, we pride ourselves on being agile and being, responsive and having someone over your shoulder and having a sort of a board, which can be, I mean, I was on a call yesterday with two board members and who we're working with on a project, and they said specifically, the CEO works for them. And I thought, that's why I'm so flipping glad that I don't work for anybody. I work for myself, and I work, as part of obviously we have to have partners and collaborators inside of the ecosystem of the private capital markets. But at the end of the day, I'm my own boss.
Right. That's true. You're my boss, but you're also my mother. So
Yeah.
little asterisk next to that one. So,
Maybe we can wind up with that. I mean, we've shared a lot of information, but I know people ask you all the time. So, Morgan, what's it like to work for
oh
your
my
mother?
God, if I had $1 for every time somebody asked me that, I wouldn't need to have a job anymore. I'd be retired. Um, I would say that working with my mother is very fulfilling, where being a part of a family business and having it not just, I mean, it's the both sides. It's not just a job, which means that at 9 o'clock or 10 o'clock, if somebody's emailing you and they need something, you're not thinking to
At night,
yourself,
9 o'clock
right.
at
You're
night.
not thinking to yourself, I don't care. I can get to this tomorrow morning. You're like, I need to get up off this couch and I need to go upstairs. I need to sit at my computer. I need to take care of this. And it's like on a Saturday morning, of course, when there's platform problems, you're like, I am not going to that workout class. Like, I am on the phone with the tech team, making sure that this is addressed as quickly as possible. But with that part, obviously, you're doing it, building something that you're really proud of. And it's something where I have the same last name, the name's on the door. So I'm very, very proud. I think you did only threaten to fire me one time, and it was a long time ago, but
Yeah.
it was when we both lived in San Francisco and we had dinner that night after, and, you just figure it out. I think that's really the biggest thing. You just take it in stride and you take it as a whole holistic picture where you take somebody's strengths and your weaknesses and you kind of put them all together, but you and I work in particular because we are very yin yang.
Yeah, we're very different. We've always but you can tell this from even our aesthetic.
I know, we don't look alike. We look related, but we don't necessarily look alike.
Yeah, no, it's true. Our styles are different. Well,
Yeah.
I'm really excited about the Caplander podcast. I am going to share by way of background. So the main business is Thelander Consulting. So Thelander. We have another division called Complander, which is the younger business. So you can go to Complander if you work for either a private company or some version of an investment firm to get comp data if you're in a junior role all the way up to a mid-level role. So we wanted to be able to have comp data accessible in the marketplace for individuals. And really that's vetted data around the mix between cash and equity or cash and carried interest. And then we opened up this media group called Caplander. So we've got Thelander, Complander, and Caplander. So it's really fun. We're growing. And I give Morgan a lot of credit for this because this was somewhat of your baby. But God knows, like my voicemail says on my phone, that I love to talk. So this is a perfect venue for
Totally.
us to showcase what we're up to here.
Yeah. And I think just before we sign off here, is that we are going to have 6 episodes in the inaugural season, and the other 5 to come are going to feature industry leaders, industry experts, people who kind of cover all areas of the private capital market, who will share kind of a mix of their personal and professional experience for how they got to where they are. And then, of course, talking about what's going on in the market. But we hope you subscribe and tune back in and follow along with us.
Great. Thank you.